Hey guys, it's Tanner with Built Not Bought, and today we're going to assemble and review the Rockler router table with the lift station. I recently purchased this and we're going to give it a whirl. The first thing the instruction asks you to do on this is to put the leg levelers into the legs. I would hold off on this though and put the side rails on first. The longer side rails go on the front and back, and then the shorter ones go on the sides, and there's two for each side of them. The reason I would wait is because the carriage bolts that you use to attach those side pieces are in the way of that leg leveler, or vice versa, so you can't tighten everything down. So wait until you're done putting the sides on and then level everything out. You can adjust the levelers by just adjusting the height of that nut on the leveling bolt.
All right, so the instructions aren't super clear on getting your router mounted into this lip, and I already got mine in here, but it took me about 10 minutes or so. So what you're going to want to do is set this base upside down, flat part down, in between two boards like this, so that the collet on your router can fit in between those as you're setting this in there. Now, the first thing that you're going to do before you put your router in place is all these set screws here have a nut that's keeping them locked in place, and you need to adjust those so that this sits nice and flat across the top. I only had to adjust one a little bit with an Allen wrench. So you just loosen the nut down below right there, and then you get an Allen wrench up from beneath, and you just raise or lower this until you get this sitting nice and flush. I just use this little square to check everything, but even better than that, just using your hands and feeling it. You don't want to lip anywhere. Once you have that plate in place, you're going to back off these two nuts right here and then loosen this Allen key. And that is basically the locking mechanism on this router. Once you have those loosened, you can drop your router into place, slide it in, but you need to make sure this crank here goes on the top, and you need to crank this all the way up before you lock anything into place. So off camera, I'm going to do that for you, but you want these rails all the way up to that O-ring. So this is all going to be upside down, of course, when you're doing it, when you're inserting the router into the base. So you crank that all the way up to the top. Insert your router at this point. The one thing that you need to be careful of is this mechanism right here. You need to make sure that nothing is in the way of that. Depending on what router you have, it might be a tighter fit than others. Okay, I just dropped my router base in a lot further, and it says to get it within 1/8 of an inch of that locking pin right here. And I mean, it's kind of tough to say. I have it about 1/8 of an inch below the table surface. That mechanism can still move freely here. My router isn't hitting it at all. There, you can see that. But definitely make sure you get it in far enough. This second collar here is around the cylindrical part of my base, so both of these are around that base. I think that's super important, and I would for sure make sure your router has both of these around this cylinder on your router motor. You're going to want to tighten this first with an Allen wrench. Once you have this tight, then you just lock these nuts back into place. Once you've got your lift all locked into place, make sure that's really snug. You don't want that router slipping and sliding anywhere. You're going to prep your table. And I mentioned earlier, they didn't include these fasteners to hold the table down to the frame, which was super frustrating. And I had to go to Menards and get these, and they fit really well. 1/4 inch by 20 by 1.5 inch flat socket cap screws. Now you don't need to have 1.5 inch, 1.25 inch would probably work. And then I just used some washers, and I used locking nuts because I don't want this thing vibrating out of place. But there you can see I have a little more bolt than necessary, but I was just kind of winging it at Menards, and these work really good. They sit just below the surface of the workstation, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Now this is absolutely crazy. My kit must not have came with all the hardware. I double checked all the boxes. There's nothing here, but it claims there's leveling screws that are supposed to be for these holes. These are just drilled out plastic, no threading, nothing. So I don't really know how that would have worked, but anyways, since mine doesn't have any hardware, I'm actually tapping out this, I don't know, it's like a plastic type material. So I have some threads to work with, and then I'm just using these 1/4-inch bolts that I'm gonna bring in from the top, like this one here. And then I'm gonna put a bunch of Loctite on these. And once I get them into place where this sits nice and level across the top of my table, I'm gonna put that Loctite in them so they hopefully don't wiggle loose as this thing is vibrating. After tapping out all those holes, I added some bolts with some blue Loctite. This stuff just kind of helps hold it in place. It's like an anti-vibration thread locker. And I went back and forth several times actually installing this with this bolt and this bolt here, and taking it out, putting it back in, and I'm pretty happy with how it feels now. Another complaint I have with this is that there isn't 4 points of securing this plate down. That just doesn't make any sense to me why they would only do it in this corner and that corner, because there is some movement with pressure on this corner and this corner. It's like teetering on these two, like a seesaw. So I have it, pretty darn good. There's places that could be better, like right here's a little bit high, but if I push down on it so that it actually hits that stop nut or bolt below, it flushes up. And this won't show up on camera, but it's sitting proud right now, but I push down to make contact with that bolt below and it's flat. And this would be avoided if they put a spot to secure this down in these 4 corners like it really should be, in my opinion. But anyways, it's pretty close to flush, so we're gonna move forward. Then you're gonna take 4 of these nuts, and these are gonna go on the back side. Now you're gonna take the 2 fences, and the little T-slot there is gonna go into these T-nuts. So you're gonna have to loosen these up a little bit and then slide it through as you go. Make sure the piece that has this laminate coating is facing up. There's a backside that doesn't have a coating, which I don't know why they didn't coat this side too, but that side is going to be facing down. Lightly snug those back down. So do that on the other side too, and we'll move on. All right, now you're going to grab 2 more of these T-nuts, put a washer on it, and this is going to slide in the forward facing T-slot on your miter fence or on your router fence, and slide those towards the center. And then the router guard is going to go right on top of those. And then we've got 2 more of these plastic knobs that will snug that down. All right, now we're back here over at the router tabletop, and you're going to need these knobs here and this little spacer bushing, and it comes with a variety of fasteners. For this point, I'm using the longer carriage bolts that come with it. And take our fence, put it into place, and this is going to be a little hard to see, but you just push these up through the bottom. Add that bushing, and then add the wing nut. Just a wing nut, bushing, and then come up from the bottom. And of course, now that I have it fully assembled again, despite having it leveled before, it needs to be re-leveled. So when I put this top on, it threw off everything that I had done before. So I'm going to re-level these legs, and then we'll call it finished.
All right, so now I have this Rockler router table and lift system completely installed and ready to go to work. I think I just want to go over a couple things, how I feel about it before even turning it on. I think my all-in on this is about 800 bucks, and I'm still having to buy more parts for it because right now, in order to turn it on, I have to open this up, reach underneath here, turn the router on from the router itself, close this, and then start working. And there's a aftermarket toggle switch that you have to pay extra for to be able to turn this on and off like a paddle switch, which is much safer. And I feel like this machine should have that as an included part. I'm not a fan of how this mounts here. The actual lift itself, I think it should have had 4 fastening points. There's not going to be that much downward force on this on a typical basis, but it should just be better than that. Missing a ton of hardware, and I ordered this over the holiday season, so I'm sure they had hundreds and hundreds of orders going through, but I still don't think that's an excuse. I had to have been missing at least 1, if not 2 bags of hardware that were supposed to come with this. And Rockler's customer support, you can email them and it takes days, if not a week plus, to get a response back. Or you can sit on hold for 30 minutes and talk to somebody on the phone, or your options. There's no digital chat or anything like that where you can just get quick answers and get your stuff in a efficient basis. So I'm not really impressed with that. All in all, if I were to rate this before even turning it on a scale of 1 to 10 for what I paid for it, I'd probably give it like a 3 or a 4. Also, why wouldn't they put somewhere to store this? Because this is going to get lost in my shop. So I'm gonna have to come up with a magnet or something where I can stick it on the side here. I think it would have been super easy of them to make some sort of an attachment where this just clips into place, but this is just gonna sit loosely somewhere for now. My first project on the router table, I'm working on some dovetails, and I use a flush trim bit to finish off these dovetails. These will go on a workbench for my shop, and it worked really well. This is so much better than having to just use a hand router, and the dust collection is working pretty darn good as well. I also want to mention that being able to adjust the height of everything above the table with this tool is super efficient, and it works pretty darn good. I also like being able to change bits above the table. It's so much better than having to reach underneath and mess around with your tools. A couple add-on features that don't come standard with this are this paddle switch. I feel like this should come standard with it, and it's super important to have this to use this safely. I don't like the idea of having to reach underneath to turn off the router. You just never know when something could be going south, and it's nice to be able to just hit that with your knee right away to turn the router off. Also, this dust box here, this just helps with the dust collection system as a whole. It basically encapsulates your router, and there's a dust port on the back. So there's this top one here, and then there's also one that goes onto the back, and it helps with dust collection. I should mention, however, this is a Rockler paddle switch, and you would think it would work well with the Rockler stand, but I had to drill out the holes because the screws didn't fit through them, and the screws are too short to go through this and into the sidewall and get the nut on the back, so I need to get some aftermarket parts. Come on, Rockler. You got to do better than that. All right, that's going to wrap up my brief initial thoughts and review on the Rockler router table system. I know I was a little bit harsh on it, but I think there's some things they could have done that would have made this so much better. I do need to mention, however, that having this is so much better than just using a hand router and setting it up on a table somewhere else with some clamps. I used this on a project already, and it was so smooth and nice to have an actual router table in the shop. Things I like about it, being able to adjust the height of it super quick with that tool. In a matter of seconds, you can change your height. There's no locking or anything like that. It just holds its spot. The second thing is being able to change your bit above the table. Changing bits on this thing is super quick and easy, and I do really like that about it. The dust collection is working quite well, surprisingly well, considering. I don't know if it would work as well without the dust box below, but I think the combination of it pulling dust down through this hole and back in through the fence worked pretty well. Overall,
I'm kind of torn on my grade for this unit. For the price, I expected more, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. Is it better than not having any router table? It sure is. So if you have any questions about this or anything else in the shop, drop it down in the comment below, and I greatly appreciate you guys watching.